Hello everyone, this is ponderonweather. In this update, we've got an upcoming snowstorm heading into the Super Bowl, and next week, the severe weather threat really ramps up. Welcome back everyone, this is your morning update. Go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe. If you hadn't subscribed already, it's free to do so. All you have to do is hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to get all my daily updates to keep you ahead of the storm. So let's get right to it. Let's first of all take a look at the overall 500 millibar, and you can really kind of see what's really happening out there with this deepening ridge of high pressure that's bringing all the well above average temperatures from much of the west coast and the southwest and even parts of the south here. You can see the demarcation of this kind of blue line. That is your colder air, if not Arctic air, well to the north. And we're watching this Arctic air push further off into the southeast, and that's going to combine with the low pressure system. That's going to bring a snowstorm heading into Saturday, ramping up on Sunday, heading towards the Super Bowl. So let's zoom into temperatures today because it's a lot of sunshine out there and a beautiful day for many, with widespread 70s and 80s across the west and the south and portions of the southeast, even along the east coast here. Look at the south wind really ramping up these temperatures well into the 50s, if not the 60s, heading all the way up into Montana. So that is definitely some really well above average air, but you can see where the Arctic air is. It's well to the north into Wisconsin, heading into Michigan, and that's going to take a beeline southward, bringing in that colder air and pushing it further southward as we get into the day on Saturday. But by tomorrow, but first we have to deal with this little clipper system that's going to be bringing some snow showers up along the Great Lakes into Wisconsin, heading into Michigan. Where you live along the lakes, that's going to bring some of your heavier snow, a little bit more lake enhanced induced snow showers, while the rest of the country is really experiencing a really nice weather. So as we go into that Saturday time frame, that's when the things change as that Arctic front continues to push south. Now, as it does, of course, Arctic air is your driest air, so there's not much left in the atmosphere heading into Kansas and Oklahoma and to Texas. It's going to be more or less a dry front as that Arctic air pushes south, and then it's going to lose and kind of modify as it pushes further south as well. Where you're going to have a little bit of a lift as we get into portions of Arkansas and Louisiana. We're going to have a transition into some light rain, and then heading into getting into Tennessee. By the time we get into that Saturday morning time frame, it's going to be cold enough, so most of that should be transferring into portions of snow going into the Tennessee Valley, heading into Kentucky, getting into parts of West Virginia by then, as well as western PA. And then as that Arctic air pushes southward, here's your temperatures. So it's going to be one of those days where it's going to be falling throughout the day and getting into the 40s for high temperatures, if not trying to top out right in the 50 to the low 50 range here in portions of North Texas. But you can see it modifying, and where all the blue areas, that is your Arctic air, and that's where the widespread 20s are going to be in place for the Ohio Valley, getting into the mid-Atlantic states as this continues to dive further off into the southeast. And as it does so, it's going to bring some lift out ahead of it. So we should have some snow showers breaking out into portions of North Carolina, getting into Virginia, into West Virginia. This is going into Saturday night in the overnight hours, into Saturday night, heading towards midnight. We got some heavier snows breaking out in eastern parts of Pennsylvania here, heading into Jersey, getting into Long Island with some light to moderate snow, and then heading into Connecticut and to Massachusetts, and eventually reaching the Vermont and New Hampshire area, as this will continue to have that lift and have that Arctic air pushing in on the backside. So as we get into that Sunday morning time frame for your Super Bowl Sunday for the 13th, we've got the low pressure system starting to develop well offshore here, and back behind it, we've got the setup with some heavier snows breaking out into Jersey, getting into Long Island, as well as along the Cape here, into Connecticut, heading into Boston area, into southern Vermont and New Hampshire, going into southern Maine by then, as we have that cold Arctic air, and that's really indication of those blue lines. That's where your colder air mass is going to be. So there's not much lift on the backside because this main upper level low will be kind of well offshore with this cold air penetrating from the northwest. So as we get into that Sunday afternoon time frame, again, this low pressure system is well offshore, and then you have backside precipitation ringing itself out over southern New England, headed into southern Maine by then, as we have this secondary piece of energy coming in on the backside with that Arctic air, and it's got some lift to it associated with it in portions of Illinois, and that's going to be headed into Indiana. But yeah, look at the setup of the vorticity on the backside. So you have that upper level low, and then we have this secondary feature that's forming back behind it. But it's got, how much lift does it actually have associated with it by the time it gets into heading into Super Bowl evening and going into the Valentine's Day? As this continues to push off, as of right now, this is the Arctic air where it looks like as of midnight on or going into that Sunday around noon time frame. Look, we got plenty of cold air, right? We got plenty widespread 20s into much of the Ohio Valley, much of the mid-Atlantic states, and much of New England. So really anything that falls is going to be in the form of snow. But the problem is with this particular system, we've got a positive NAO. So, right, that's typically doesn't allow the systems to kind of slow down. It makes them a little bit more progressive. So a lot of this, what we're dealing with is this particular system, is it seems to be a little bit more progressive. There's not really anything, this ridge of high pressure that set up shop over here is going to be not enough to really slow this down, to really kind of intensify this storm and kind of head it up the coast. So the main lift is going to be well off the Delmarva Peninsula here of this upper level low, and then back behind it we've got that secondary lift, but that's falling into the Arctic air. So we're going to have some light to moderate and sometimes heavier snows impacting going into Saturday night, heading into your Sunday, going into that Sunday afternoon, and then of course the Super Bowl starts around 5 o'clock into the afternoon hours on Sunday, and this is your setup by the time we get into that 9 o'clock time frame with plenty of cold air, right? So anything that falls is really not going to go anywhere. The snow plows are going to be out, and so definitely watch. You've got a lot of obviously Super Bowl parties out there. A lot of people are probably going to be either staying home or traveling and heading out. But yeah, it's going to be treacherous travel in this neck of the woods with this snowstorm that's continuing to push further off into the southeast with those light to moderate snows pushing off the Cape by then, and we have that some of that little bit of a lift back behind it. But again, the main energy source from this system as this upper level low will be offshore, and by the time that secondary piece comes back behind it, it's going to be plenty of cold enough. I'm not just so sure how much lift it's going to have with it, as this upper level low is going to be continuing to push off further off into the east. And you can kind of really see that on the vorticity as we go into Valentine's Day, with this upper level low really continuing to push well offshore here. And then you have that secondary piece coming in on the backside, falling into that drier, more or less Arctic air. And that is going to be Arctic air in nature. This little bowling ball feature that we're going to be highlighting as this starts getting into next week for your Monday time frame, that's got some cold core with it, but it doesn't have anything more or less Arctic in nature. And as this dives southward, it's not really coming from the Pacific, right? So as it dives southward, more or less southward, it doesn't really have that much lift. So there is going to be some some colder air with it as long as you're underneath this cold core. But as it moves away, there's not really any Arctic air to contend with. So it is going to be a little bit below average as this upper level low will be overhead, and it is going to bring a little bit of precipitation and some snow into the higher elevations. But once this passes, there's no Arctic air in source, so it's going to be rapidly warming up on the backside. And then you got the colder air and then the lift over Southern California, which looks good, right? But again, it doesn't come from the Pacific side, so it really doesn't have that much lift associated with it. There are going to bring some showers and definitely some much needed showers. It's just not really that much to technically speak of as we get into that Wednesday time frame. And you can see the surface map underneath it. Again, it's got some lift, a little bit of a lift. So it is going to bring some snow showers, into Idaho, into Montana, going into Wyoming. But around this upper level low, underneath it, you're going to have those a little bit of below average temperatures, but it's not Arctic in nature. And then, underneath that, since it's diving southward and not really coming out from the Pacific side, really doesn't have that much lift associated with it. So you are going to bring some much needed rain showers. It's just not going to amount to really that much as the rest of the country, again, lifts. As that south wind, you get the southwest wind, that's a warm wind. So we're going to be rapidly warming up in a big way on the backside as this disturbance moves out. By the time we get into that Wednesday time frame, there's your cold core, right? So again, like I mentioned, it's not much Arctic air associated with it. As it traverses over you, that's where it's going to cool down a little bit. But once it passes, you're going to warm it up on the backside. So of course, out ahead of it, you got well above average temperatures, and that is going to be setting the fuel for possible severe weather as we get into that Wednesday time frame, and that will extend portions off to the east as we get deeper into next week. Because as this upper level low traverses over New Mexico, then it makes a transition, and then it's going to be able to pull some of that Pacific moisture into it, and that's going to have a little bit more lift associated with it. So once it gets into New Mexico and portions of Texas and to the panhandle of Texas, we're going to have, and then of course Colorado as well, we're going to have a lot more lift associated with it. So then underneath that could bring some little bit lighter to moderate snows, and then out ahead of it in the warm sector, start having some rain, thunderstorms, if not severe weather starting to break out by then. Because by then, look at the dew points as we get into later Wednesday night time frame. This is of course next week. Yeah, this surge of well above average dew points for this time of year, once you get dew points back into the 60s, here's the demarcation line of that drier air. Almost sets up like a dry line type setup with those dew points into the 20s in West Texas, and out ahead of it in Central and North Texas, dew points approaching into this 65 into 60 degree range, as you got a lot of lift from that south wind. So as this system pulls across, you're going to have a lot of clash. So we should have some much needed rain break out into Texas. But as that clash moves in with that dry line feature moving in, some of those could actually turn severe, as we get into that Wednesday night time frame. But underneath that cold core, that's where the snow is going to be breaking out into New Mexico, getting into Colorado by then, with that underneath that cold core aloft. But look at the temperatures by the time we get into that Thursday time frame. So yeah, there's going to be a sharp gradient. Again, underneath that upper level low, that's where the cold source is going to be. So as it's going to be able to slow down a little bit, once it reaches this part of the country, we're going to have a little bit more lift associated with it. It's going to be dragging down a little bit more colder air as well. And underneath that, we're going to have some snow breaking out in the Texas panhandle. But out ahead of it, we got well above average temperatures. So so well above average temperatures are going to be impacting for much of the southeast and much of the east coast and the northeast. This is not until next week as we go into that Thursday time frame. And yeah, with that clash of temperatures, we're going to be having some severe weather to contend with as this continues to push off from the west to the east. So I really start to think it's more or less sets up on Wednesday. And then, yes, as we get deeper into the week, this will traverse across. Because, yeah, as we get into that Thursday time frame, it should more or less be out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but on the backside, it's going to be cold enough to wring out the snow into the Texas Panhandle and to portions of the Oklahoma Panhandle, getting into Kansas by then. But out ahead of it, there's the warm sector. With all those well above average temperatures, some of these storms are going to be on the severe side, and if not some heavier rain side, pushing into Louisiana, getting into Mississippi, as it looks to be a lot more active week next week than what you've experienced this week, with all the high and dry temperatures and enjoying all the sunshine. So definitely enjoy the sunshine while it lasts, because next week it definitely appears, especially as we get into the midweek and later on at the end of the week, it's a lot more active for a good chunk of the U.S. And here's your precipitation over the next week. And like I mentioned, we've got that low pressure traversing across, but there's not technically much lift. I know these areas have been really dry as of late, so you are going to be getting some precipitation. It's just not that much to speak of, but they'll take everything they get and portions of California and get into the desert Southwest. But once this moves across into portions of Texas, we're going to be dealing with some much needed rain, but some of those rain showers could be in thunderstorms, could be on the severe side, especially as you get into North Texas, and then transitioning into Thursday time frame into Louisiana, into the portions of the Southeast. A lot of these could be on the little higher gradient on the severe side. We'll just have to see how this plays out. But that's the initial thinking so far as we get into next week. So I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely leave your comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel to catch the latest update where I protect you before and after the storm.